Welcome back, Metalheads, to the Friday 13th YouTube channel. Today I've got a fantastic interview for you. This is with New York drummer John Macaluso, a fantastic drummer. First of all, I want to thank John for doing this interview. Now, most of you may know John's work. He's been involved with Riot, TNT, Stone Ladies, Ark, Yngwie Malmsteen. The list just goes on. So please enjoy this interview. It's in two parts. Please share on social media and leave comments. Thanks for watching.
Finally, we meet. I know
Yeah.
you got Powermad in the back. That's cool.
Hey, I've got lots more coming soon as well, my brother. So how are you doing?
I'm good. Listen, I've been playing drums for 47 years, so I'm going to need these. It's very hard to hear. 1 second.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah. So welcome to Friday 13th, brother. So I'm going to ask you some warm-up questions first. Originally, you're from New York. Now you're living in Italy. When did you move from New York to Italy?
Well, if you remember my band Ark from
We're going to talk
ago,
about those guys soon.
yeah. From years ago, I mean, Ark broke up. We got back together. We broke up. We got back together. It's like one of those typical things. Like my old band TNT. Every year it's a new reunion. I'm like, when did they break up? But Ark split up a lot. And then we took a big break, like me and the guitarist, we wrote the music, you know? So we started to talk on the phone and we said, okay, let's try it again. So I kind of sold everything, my car, I left my apartment, and I moved to Sweden, where he lives. He's Norwegian, but he lives in Sweden.
Yeah, I know Tog. I've known him many years.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, so I moved over to Sweden from New York, and we started writing songs for the third album, and we wrote a lot of stuff. And then we took a little trip to Norway, and we went in like a mountain cabin. We were hanging out for a while and writing stuff, and we broke up again. So I said, there's no way I'm going back to New York right now. I have to find a new apartment. I got to buy a new car, the whole thing. I said, I'm going to stay in Europe. So I just started to talk to people through the internet. And a friend of mine from Italy, he said, why don't you come over and do a clinic? You could stay at my place. Okay, totally cool. I went to Italy. I did a clinic. From there, I met a guy. He said he can book me over in Sardinia, which is the island off Italy. He said, I'll book you a bunch of recording sessions and a clinic. Went over to Sardinia, started to play. Then I got more gigs in Italy. Then I went down to Sicily. And before I knew it, I was pretty much living in Italy. So the reality is I never left. And it's been about 12 years now.
Wow.
So yeah, the band broke up, but I really got heavily into doing clinics and the whole education thing, teaching in schools. I mean, I love that stuff. I'm a drum guy. So besides rocking, I really appreciate the whole clinic and school thing. So basically that's what I was doing. I was going around Europe with my pedals and my stick bag and playing everywhere. And that's what I do. But now I opened up the studio, so that's like my main thing right now, doing a lot of sessions. Eventually, I'm going to start something and get back out on tour. But right now, it's recording studio stuff. So it's been good, man. It's been good.
So, John, when did you start playing drums? At what age? And what was your first drum kit?
I was 11 years old, and we have a thing called the J.C. Penney, which is a store like Sears or something like that. The J.C. Penney catalog. All right. So every year this thing would come and it was like things you can order through the mail and everything. And I remember I saw like a Sunburst Stratocaster. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool looking. That's so cool looking. I got to play guitar. So I kept bugging my mother. I want to play guitar. I want to play guitar. She says, okay, true story. So we're going to get the guitar. We got in the car, me, her, and my sister. And at the top of my block, there was a garage sale. You know what that is?
Yeah.
When people sell their junk in front of the house.
Yeah, we call them car boot sales in England.
Yeah. So I saw a drum set, gold sparkle, and I was a big Who fan. And I remember, no, it was like orange sparkle. And I loved the movie Tommy. I loved Keith Moon. And it reminded me of the Tommy drum set. And instantly I was like, forget the guitar. Let's go check the drums out. So we got out of the car and we bought the kit. It was $20. 20. It was called a Microsonic, and it was Chinese made or Japanese, I'm not sure. But as soon as I got home, I put a Ludwig bass drum head on the front. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
to
yeah.
make it be more authentic. But 11 years old, that's how I started, and I never stopped, man. That's all I've done since then. You
So
know?
Keith Moon is one of your main influences. Who else has inspired you as a drummer?
Yeah, Moon was the first. Moon was the first, and then there was a band where I'm from in New York. Well, Long Island, they were from, called the Good Rats. Have you heard of the Good Rats?
No, but I was actually in New York 20 years ago on Long Island. I was staying with a friend who was in a band called Altered Vision.
Uh-huh.
So I managed to see Wicked Mariah in New York back in the day.
Oh, yeah, yeah. The Good Rats were my favorite band at the time. And it was a band that basically only known on the East Coast of America. Famous there, you know, but other places not so famous. And the drummer was Joe Franco. You know Joe Franco.
No, but enlighten me.
Joe Franco wrote the #1 Bible double bass book in the world.
Okay.
And he was my drum teacher for 5 years, and he's just unbelievable. I mean, he did the first Mariah Carey album. He did Taylor Dane. He did Twisted Sister. He was with Vinnie Moore. I mean, Joe Franco, one of the best drummers on the planet, and
Right,
a lot
okay.
of big albums and stuff. So basically, Joe Franco was the second influence,
Right.
and I got to study with him. And then the third would be Bozio. And the reason I got into Bozio, I was a gigantic Neil Peart fan. But in Long Island or in New York, everybody was doing exactly what Neil Peart did. You know, it was, and even started playing the beats. And I love it. But at an early age, I said, I have to change because everybody's doing the same thing. So I got into Bozio, and I kind of switched my style. I switched the kit around and everything, and got more into him. So the big four, the last one is Phil Collins. And Phil Collins is like, when you see him live with Genesis or on his own, it just sounds like an album. He's the perfect drummer. He's an incredible drummer. So that's my big four. It's Moon, Bozio, Franco, and Phil Collins.
What about metal
That's
drummers?
my salad.
What about metal drummers? Early metal drummers. Who inspired you? Was there any metal drummers?
Metal drummers, I got to be honest, I never really got into. Yeah, I mean, they're great. It's kind of like the new jazz. The drummers in metal are the guys who experiment. So I appreciate it, but I'm more, I don't, okay, I get hired to play a lot of metal, and I love metal, but my record collection is a lot different than you might think. It's a lot of like Pink Floyd and 70s stuff, and then electronic, like Bjork. I love Bjork. I love electronic music because
It's funny you
I don't
should
listen to
mention
the drums.
Bjork, because when you mention Bjork, she reminds me of Jorn Lande, especially on the Ark albums.
Who?
Jorn's trying to sound like Bjork on the Ark albums. He's trying to experiment. You can hear it in the albums, but we'll talk about that later. But you can definitely hear Jorn trying to sound like Bjork on certain songs.
Yeah, there's a whole story there. There's a whole story there. That whole Burn the Sun, how we did it. If you want to ask me later, I'll tell
I
you
will
now.
be. I will be asking you questions about that later. But I mean, what was your first band then, John? That professional band that you got into?
Well, I started writing songs before I actually played drums, and it was me and my friend across the street named Michael Gill, and he had an acoustic guitar with the top string only. So he brought it over, and we would start to write songs. And I had I started to jam with him on my little drum set. So I'm like, okay, you got one string, you're the bass player. So we had a bass player, a drummer, and both of us would sing. And we would just write these silly songs. Like our number one hit when we were 11 was Swimming in the Pool. And it goes like this. Swimming in the pool is very cool, is very cool. Swimming in the pool. And that was, so there's my first song I ever wrote. And yeah, we called the band Essex. Don't ask me why.
Okay.
Essex. And then we changed it to the Stone Rats. It was the Rolling Stones he loved, and I loved the Good Rats. So it was the Stone Rats. So when I was 11, writing songs, Swimming in the Pool, Stone Rats. But the first real band, it's a corny name, man. It's called Chaser, but it was spelled Chase Her. Oh, bad news. I'll be here all week.
So
And that's the band where I first went out and did gigs with. And it's amazing because the first gig we did, there was what do you call it? Like a battle of the bands.
yeah,
And a bunch of bands played and we won. So the prize was like $100, more than a lot of bands make today. So after we won the competition, we went backstage and the guy gave us $50 and each of us a joint, like marijuana. And I'm like, wait, well, I'd rather have the other 50. And that was pretty much the introduction. I mean, we were kids, man. That was the introduction to the music business for me. We didn't get paid in full, but we got a couple of joints. And I've done worse gigs, trust me. But yeah, so from there I started to span out and I wanted to get the hell out of New York and go to school. So what I did, I wanted to go to music school. I checked out Berkeley, and Berkeley to me was like you had to take English, you had to take math. I mean, I was getting out of school. That's the last thing I wanted to do. So I went to see like the administrator up there, and it was just not my thing. So I heard of PIT, Percussion Institute of Technology, and I was in California. You know PIT, right?
yeah,
Musicians Institute.
yeah.
Yeah, so basically I doubled up on my subjects. I went to night school and day school in 11th grade, and I didn't have to go to 12th grade. We have 12 grades in America. You guys probably have the same. But instead of going to the last year of school, I took off and moved to California. And from there, I went to PIT and I started doing real gigs. Like, after school ended, I played with a guy named Paul Hansen. And that was the first time I went to Europe. We did an album called The Visitor in Munich, in Germany. And then I played with Alex Massey. We toured around the West Coast.
He did a lot of instrumental albums, didn't he?
Yeah, because the singer's always a pain in the ass, but yeah, but that's where it spanned off from. And then I got TNT. He says hello.
Hi.
Yeah, actually before TNT was Powermad.
That's what I'm going to talk to you about, the Absolute Power album. I mean, you did the movie for Nicolas Cage, The Wild. Is it The Wild? Oh, fucking hell, Wild at Heart.
Wild at Heart, man.
How did you guys feel about doing that? I mean, you were in the movie and then Nicolas Cage got punched in the face and you guys started doing that love song.
He was in character. You could tell he's like Nicolas Cage went to Hollywood high school. So you could imagine he grew up in Hollywood. And, Francis Ford Coppola, I think, is his uncle and stuff. It was the most amazing thing. I'd never been on a movie set in my life. And really quickly, Powermad, I still don't know how I got the call. But after PIT, I went back to New York. And I was in my basement, my parents' basement. We were shooting pool, me and my father. And my mother says, "Hey, John, Warner Brothers Records is on the phone." I grabbed the phone. I'm like, "Come on." I thought it was my friend Mike. I'm like, "Come on, Mike." And yeah, this is Kevin from Warner Brothers Records. And we got your name. We have an emergency. We're recording a record at the record plant in New York City. The band's from Minnesota and the drummer's not cutting it. Because in those days, you had to play from beginning to end of a song on tape.
Yeah, that's right.
You couldn't punch. You couldn't, it was basically learn the song and rock and play the whole way through, even if it's a 13-minute song. So these guys came over my parents' house at like 12 at night. They drove from Manhattan with the producer. And I go, "What do you want me to play?" They're in my basement, right? The guy goes, "Play me some wailing double bass." Wailing double bass. So I was like, "Okay, tomorrow, can you come to New York City and start recording our album?" Great. So I went into New York City every day for like a week. And that album was tough to do because, like I said, you had to go from beginning to end. And the drummer was in the studio with me the whole time. Imagine that. So he comes all the way from Minnesota, going to record the first real album with his band. And at that time, you had to be dead on with the click. You had to play, it was no punching. So basically, in front of him, I would do the whole track and he would go, "No, you missed that tom fill." I'm like, "Oh my God." So that's why the songs took one day a song, because I had to listen to what he wanted me to play and go through. You know what I mean? No mistakes. I wrote charts and hey. So that's how the Powermad album was done. And then
it must have been
the funny
frustrating
thing
for you. It must have been frustrating for you, John, because like you come in that last minute and this guy's getting pissed off with you because you're doing his drum parts.
wait, one more time. Sorry, the last minute thing.
So the drummer must be really pissed off with you because you're coming in at last minute to do his drum parts.
He was a cool dude, but yeah, man. I mean, his pissed off at me. I'm sure he was more pissed when they called me for the tour.
I mean, it was a great album, wasn't it? Absolute Power. I mean, it must have been brought a lot of success. I mean, with the movie.
It was a groundbreaking album when you think about it, even drum wise, because I was the only guy to use a piccolo snare in thrash music, and it became a kind of a standard. You know, it was a 13-inch pearl piccolo, tiny little thing.
Yeah.
Two big 24-inch kicks like Yamaha. And it worked, man. And the funny thing is, so they asked me to go on tour. After I did all this playing his parts, it would have been so much better if I did my own parts, but I wasn't the drummer. And, if you read the credits on that album, my name is listed somewhere in the credits. I think below Joe's Pizzeria. Thank you, Joe's Pizzeria. But it basically those days I made a good living because I was like a ghost drummer. After that, I got called for other gigs, and studios in Manhattan were, if you can read and you can play to a click, you were very wanted because music business was booming in those days. You know what I mean? It was like the bands were getting record deals for real money. So, and there was a lot of pressure on the producers. They had to have a great product, even if the band was young and the drummer couldn't really play. They were like, I don't give a shit. We need a studio guy. There was no mercy. So basically, after I did that whole Powermad album, they asked me to go on tour. And I remember flying to Minnesota, and this is crazy, man. You double bass and that style, it's kind of like going into a boxing rink. You can't go in there and be like, I hope my feet are going to cut it at this tempo. You got to be fierce, man. So when I got to Minnesota, we practiced for like a week, and I couldn't do what I did on the album. And I don't know if it was psychological or not. So I told the dudes, I go, guys, I can't handle this. And I would never do that. That's not my personality. But I told them, I said, I can't do this. I don't want to mess you guys up, but there's no way I can play a whole set of music like this. And they're like, okay. Will you give it one more shot? I said, I'll tell you tomorrow. So the next day we went on like a boat. In Minnesota, there's 1,000 lakes, So on the boat, the manager got a phone call. He said, David Lynch wants us in his movie. And the movie's called Hearts Are Wild. And Mooney Basta. My dog's Mooney, like Keith Moon.
Yeah.
Mooney Basta. So basically, at that point, they're like, John, please, we can't screw this up. So I started running every day. I was jogging every morning. And then I went in. And within 2 days, maybe it was the David Lynch thing, I got this new energy, and boom, I nailed it. So rehearsal for the tour, I was running every day, and we did like two, basta, more, basta, seduto. He doesn't listen. Yeah, so what happened was I was running and practicing like crazy. I would stay afterwards. And I think it was a psychological thing because when I did the tour, I nailed it every night. And so we opened up for a lot of bands. Like in those days, it was like, if you want a tour bus, Warner Brothers will give you a tour bus for 1 week. There's your tour. Or you can have a car, like a Lincoln Town car. The whole band rides in the car and a rider truck follows behind with the equipment. And you could tour for 6 months. So that's what we did. We were out there. We played with everyone from Fates Warning, Blois the Cult, Sacred Reich, Forbidden, Easy-O. And we toured with everyone. And then we were going to the West Coast, and David Lynch wanted us to be in this movie. So we go to the West Coast, and Nicolas Cage canceled. He said, I got another gig. So how about next week we shoot the movie? And film money is a lot more money than music money. So like, okay, you guys could just hang out in a hotel for a week in LA. I'm like, this is crazy. So we had a week vacation. And then we went into the movie set, which was a place called the Palomino. And it was like a country Western bar in LA, in Hollywood, I think. And They called it the Hurricane Club in the movie. So on the movie set, Nicolas Cage had the snakeskin jacket, and he stayed in that character the whole time. Kind of like Elvis. He's like, hey, nice to meet you. You boys are real good. The whole time he talked like that. We even went to eat with them, like, go out with them, Laura Dern and Nicolas Cage. He wore the jacket and he spoke like that for 2 days straight. You boys are real good. You're a real good band. How you like living in Minnesota? I'm like, that's not Nicolas Cage's voice. In character, professional. So it took a long time to shoot that scene. It really made me appreciate movie making. And David Lynch, incredible. Like he was improvising the whole time. I mean, there was a fire down the block and some guy came running in. He goes, there's a fire, a building on fire. So instead of like everybody, running away or like trying to, getting out of the building for safety, he goes, let's go film it. So everybody comes out, the band and everyone, and he filmed the building on fire. And throughout that movie, you could see fire scenes. Like the window is on fire and stuff. That's all taken from that day. So he's kind of like, it's not over till it's over type of guy. And the movie was incredible. I mean, if you're going to be in one movie in your life, be in that movie.
Yeah. So what songs from that album? What songs from that album do you like from the Absolute Power album?
I love Absolute Power. I love Slaughterhouse is the track from the movie.
Yeah.
My friend at Warner Brothers calls it the best dance album in history because he said you can't stand still listening to that record. A Plastic Town is my favorite one. You know Plastic Town?
Yeah, I've got the album, yeah.
That's the first song we did. And sonically, again, you can hear the piccolo. I do the snare rolls. Got to use my drum lesson chops in the beginning of the song. And it's just fierce, man. Plastic, that whole album is fierce. It's a ridiculously good album. I love it, man.
I mean, the band broke up, didn't they? And then they kind of reformed in recent years. I'd say the band broke up, but they recently reformed a couple of years ago, trying to make a comeback. Was you asked to do the band then? Yeah, was you asked to be part of the band?
Yeah, with Powermad, I got a call years ago to play some kind of festival, and they wanted Powermad, and they're like, can you get in touch with the band? I'm like, it's really not my band. I was a hired gun throughout that whole thing. But I contacted Joel, who is the singer and the guitar player, and there was a festival. So I kind of hooked them up, but they had another guy, like a permanent drummer. So, I think they got back into playing a little bit, but I think they disbanded again. I don't know if it's around still, but they did do another album.
Yeah, I mean, you've done so much. I mean, looking at your Wikipedia page, and you've been in so many bands, Riot, TNT. The list goes on, man. You've done a lot of work, haven't you, in your career?
Yeah, it's kind of like it keeps me out of trouble. Recording and playing keeps me out of trouble. No, I mean, what happened was, after Powermad, I got the TNT gig.
Yeah.
And TNT was very popular when I lived in California, for example. I would go to school and they were on the radio all the time, KNAC. So I was joining this band I used to listen to. And I got recommended from Joe Franco, the drummer from the Good Rats, I told you, my old teacher. And he recommended me. And I was in TNT for 3 years, but imagine this, they still never asked me to join the band.
Did you actually record any albums with them?
Yeah, I was basically, again, I was a session guy.
Yeah.
Then I joined the band. I was in the band for 3 years, but like, I'm not joking. They never said you're in. It was just kind of like, okay, we're going on tour. Next album, next down. But from that was a very restricting experience because I finally joined the band I used to listen to. I mean, not many people get that opportunity. I was like, wow. And I did their demos. And you're a drummer.
Yeah.
When I did the demos, I pulled everything a little bit behind the click. I love to do that because then if you're playing something fierce, the singer doesn't have to spit the words out and the band is not rushing. So I do my snare drum. If you look at a grid in today's world, you'll see the snare is a tiny, tiny, tiny bit after the click, but the bass drum is dead on the click. And the trick sonically, the hi-hat is the connection between the bass and the snare. So my snare drum is a little bit back. And that's the way I like to play rock and roll. So I did their demos like that, and they loved it. But when we went to record the real album, they went overboard. Backbeats, pull it back. So everything was like, in my opinion, listening now, it's super slow, even though it's on a click. So I think we took that too far, that whole back thing. So besides that, I'm not a big fan of that album.
Which album was it? Realized Fantasy, yeah.
Realized Fantasies, yeah. Some people really dig it, but for me, I had bigger expectations for that album. I wanted to do my thing, man. I'm finally in a band I listened to. But the cool thing is, we were always in Europe. And from there, I met Tora, the guitar player, because TNT, we borrowed Conception. We borrowed their rehearsal studio for a couple of weeks before our tour in Japan. So the guitar player used to hang out after they would, Conception would rehearse, and he would watch us rehearse. And when TNT went home, me and the guitar player would play floor hockey. It was a gymnasium.
Yeah.
Playing floor hockey. And then he had an acoustic guitar. And I said, can you do any like Latin style stuff? And he said, yeah, let's jam. So we played Race with the Devil on a Spanish Highway, which is Al Di Meola.
Yeah.
Yeah,
James Murphy played that on one of his albums with Steve DiGiorgio on bass.
Exactly. But Steve DiGiorgio, I love him. Amazing. So yeah, that was Ark's start. That's how we started Ark. Him playing. So we did the Latino style thing. And then I would play double bass, but not like metal double bass, more like split rhythm. He would follow me on guitar. And, I got TNT, I went on tour, and then I did Riot. But we were always talking on the phone, me and the guitar player. And we said, we got to do something one day. So after TNT broke up, I still had a plane ticket to go back to Norway. So I called him and I said, you want to do something? He said, yeah, let's do it. There you go. So I flew to Norway, and we wrote the first album and recorded it. So It was really a demo, the first record. It was supposed to be a demo to get a record deal. But then we got Jorn Landa to sing, who I knew from TNT. And when we shopped it to the record labels, we got a record deal in a record store. We were walking around. We're the only band to get the deal in the record store. So we're walking around Oslo, me and a guitar player, and he had the cassette tape on him. No, he had the, what do you call it? He had the tape with him. And we met one of the record company guys that he knew in a record store. The guy was checking out albums. We talked to him, and right there and then he signed us. He said, okay, you got it. You got a deal. Give me a call tomorrow. We sent him the music, and he said, I want to put this out. We said, it's a demo. He said, no, this is the album. So that's how Ark started. He released our demo. And am I talking too much?
No. It's weird that you mentioned the demo, because the first album is absolutely awesome. I mean, the music is so diverse, and saying being a demo is definitely, you can tell now it's a demo recording.
Yeah. It was recorded in the school gymnasium on 1/2-inch tape. And the funny thing is, after it was recorded, Conception had to do their demos. So we thought it was a demo. They went over the tapes with the Conception demo. So there was no master at that point. You know what I mean? There was no master tape, because they had to use the tape to do their demos. So everything was deleted. But here's the cool thing. The song, okay, as a drummer, you understand what made Ark different drumming wise. I took a Stuart Copeland approach. I said, you don't always need 2 and 4 snare. Rhythm is rhythm. So if you check out the beginning of Where the Winds Blow, it's just rhythm. There's no snare drum. And I took that approach throughout the album. Like that type of stuff. Morse code, I called it. And then Jorn Landa singing that style of vocal, and then flamenco guitar. It was just, there was no rules. That's what made Ark. There was no rules. Like, you can play double bass with flamenco guitar. You could do drum and bass style music with metal guitar.
I mean,
There was no rules.
your drumming on the album was very Latin American, wasn't it? On those albums.
Wait, what was that?
Your drum style on those albums were very Latin American, like Latino sort of kind of drumming.
Big time. I mean, I studied a lot of it in school, like PIT. PIT was cool because it was 1 year, and then they kick you out. Go play, And I was big into the Latin thing because in the Latin thing, basically, you're trying to sound like a whole rhythm section, because Latin music, it's a conga, it's timbale, it's not one guy playing everything. It's different people. So you try to simulate that with your four limbs. And I was always into that. It was challenging. So yeah, I mean, that's how we started Ark. It was a Latin-based thing. We did sambas, who does a samba with metal? You know what I mean? And from that album, I got a call one day and I heard, John, this is Yngwie Malmsteen.
Yeah.
I got your number from this guy, whatever. Again, I thought it was a joke because he put the J. He called and said, it's Yngwie Malmsteen. And he says, somebody sent me this CD and it's a song called Where the Winds Blow. Is it you playing? I said, yeah, it's me playing. He goes, can you come down next week and record my album?
Yeah.
Buy me a ticket. Boom. Got me a plane ticket. Boom. And I was playing with Yngwie because of the Ark song.
I mean, getting back to Ark, how did you meet up with Jorn then?
When I was in TNT, Jorn was a guy who used to just come by. Okay, they have a place, Ronnie Latique, the guitar player. He had a studio, and in Norway, everybody plays something. So there was constantly people coming in his recording studio. And it was also a big hang. We would hang out in the back room all the time. In fact, we hung more than we played. And Jorn was a guy, he's a singer who came by, and he used to just come hang out with us. I never heard him sing. I had no idea he was so good. But I hung with him like 20 times. And, we weren't friendly, but it was like, hey, Jorn, how you doing? Because he would come in and people would come in as we were working or just hanging out. And then after TNT, they started this band Vagabond. And
yeah,
I'm like,
I've got one of the albums.
Yeah, I'm listening. I'm like, wait, that's the blonde guy who used to come into the studio? He's great. He's great. So with the first Ark album, we had only the music. We recorded all the music. And Tora plays bass on it. We put a fake name, Todd Paulson.
Right.
But it's really Tora. Tora is Todd Paulson, for the first album. And he called me and he said, hey, what about that guy Jorn? I met him in England somewhere, and he said he'd be interested in singing on the album. So I said, great. So that album, I didn't write any lyrics or anything. Jorn went in and did all the vocals. I was in New York. And I got to be honest, when Tora sent it to me, I hated it. I go, what the hell is going on? I should have been there. I go, it sounds like David Coverdale playing over my Latino metal beats. What's going on here? I really hated it. I said, this is dead. It's so old school now because the way he sang, it was like Dio and Coverdale. And I just wasn't into it. And then we put it out and it grew on me, man. It grew on me. I said, no matter like it or not, it's addictive. And I started to really love it. And I'm like, wait a minute. There is something here. And people started to dig it. So in the beginning, my first reaction was, no, I wanted like a Peter Gabriel or a David Bowie type thing, And I remember Jorn, I was telling him the story. And he goes, no, I'm a singer, I must sing. And he jumped up like this. Like he didn't want to do that Bowie type of thing. He wanted to really belt it out. So, I mean, yeah, that's the story of the first album. Then I got the Malmsteen gig and I toured everywhere,
Yeah, we'll talk about that shortly. But what's your favorite songs from the first Ark album? Do you have any favorite songs?
Okay, the first one, Burning Down, the whole song was started just like the album. The whole song started with the drum beat. It's one of the first things we wrote, and then Tora wrote to that drum beat. So that whole thing is that's how it started. And I love Burning Down, but my favorite is Mother Love. You know that one?
Yeah, oh yeah, I've got the albums, yeah.
Mother Love is great. And there's a lot of really experimental stuff we did in the studio. Like on the chorus of Mother Love, you hear like a gigantic explosion on the double bass part. You hear a gigantic like explosion. So what I did basically, I took a 24-inch bass drum head and put it on a snare stand, and we mic'd it with 2 mics above and below, and I just hit it like bang, like that. I just hit the thing, and then we pumped it up in a mix. But the intro of the album is school gymnasium, broken Heineken bottles, and on top of the bottles, I put drum heads, and then I put a broken splash cymbal and a broken china, and I made a drum set on the floor. And then I played the intro of the album, and then we put it through a flanger. So if you listen to the intro, you hear glass going.
Right.
It's the glass reverberating. You're the English master.
Yeah.
Give me a word for that. So we'll put that's the beginning of the Ark album.
Right.
So again, very experimental stuff.